Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We have Dr. Mike Rothschild who's going to host tonight, and our esteemed guest, Dr. Andrew Pucker. So thank you guys for being here. We might give it just 1 or 2 more minutes as people trickle in here, but I thought it might be fun to ask where everyone went to optometry school. Since Dr. Pucker works at UAB, I thought it might be fun if everyone could kind of put in the chat where they went to see if we have any glaring school pride from one particular school. Where did you go, Dr. Rothschild?
I went to the Southern College of Optometry in Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh, I love Memphis. Best barbecue ever. So good. What about you, Dr. Pucker?
Went to the Ohio State University.
Okay, Ohio proud. Okay, let's see. What do we have here? SCCO, very fun. ICO, which is Illinois, right? Chicago, love it. Pacific University, OSU, Nova.
Somebody put OSU without putting the big giant D in front of it. I didn't think that was.
I said that to be annoying, but it is part of the name. Official name.
TM, right? That's trademarked.
We got an Aston University from the UK. Hope I pronounced that right.
Ashton. So PCO and cannot call it Salus. I've seen Salus and PCO. So help me understand the difference.
One is Pacific and one is in Pennsylvania.
Okay. And they both go by that?
Pennsylvania College of Optometry and Pacific University College of Optometry. So that's the difference.
PCO had a name change. Wow.
Got it. And to Salus.
Right.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
We have Waterloo, the Canadians, Houston. Great. We do have a great representation. So it is really exciting to have everybody here, and really excited to because we are going to be talking about education to some degree today, but mostly, as you guys know, this is a webinar series called Powered by Patients, which really focuses on how telehealth is being utilized within optometry. So we're very excited to bring a diverse group of clinicians and experts into this realm. And today is no exception. We have my friend, Dr. Andrew Pucker is joining us. And as you have heard, he is a faculty member at UAB College of Optometry in Birmingham, Alabama. And I was a faculty member there until a few months ago, and really got to enjoy working with Dr. Pucker kind of as the pandemic rolled in, and we sort of went through our adjustments and learned how to do that. And then what I can tell you about Dr. Pucker in the short amount of time that I've had the fortune of working with him is that he's an innovative thinker. He's always looking for ways to do things better. He's very thoughtful, considerate. He is a researcher, and he is an outstanding teacher who has great respect from all of his students and fellow faculty members, and just someone that I really, really enjoy working with and look up to. I have a lot of questions. I certainly don't have a research mindset myself, but I do enjoy working with him because I go and I can ask him exactly what the research is showing and know that I can get a good, thoughtful answer. So very, very exciting to have him join us today to tell us how he's using telemedicine in optometry, specifically in myopia control. He is in charge of the Myopia Control Clinic, Myopia Management Clinic at UAB School of Optometry, and implementing that into the system and trying to figure out the best way to make sure that most of the patients are taken care of, as well as teaching the next generation of optometry school students exactly how to do that. Before we get started, before I turn it over to Dr. Pucker, we want to get a feel for exactly, as you can see, he's very cool. What I want to do is I want to get a feel for kind of what our overall experience is in myopia management. So let's just get a sense. We have one little poll question that we'd like for everyone to answer. You should see it on your screen now if you're listening to us live. So basically, we want to know, what is your level of experience with myopia management? And you can choose one, and it's just whether you're beginning, You've recently implemented it and just starting to see patients with it. You've been doing it for a while, and it's an occasional part of your practice, or it's a regular part of your practice, and you utilize it on a regular basis. So just go ahead and let us know how you practice with that. And then some of you on the call may not be clinicians, and that's certainly okay, but you can participate by watching. But anybody who practices in any degree, just let us know. So the poll went away. I'm assuming that was enough time, and we've got a good mix. I am assuming that everybody can see the results, but just in case, so about a third of us are just beginning to learn. 15 recently implemented and or occasionally prescribed, 12% of those, and 42% are regularly prescribing myopia management. So thank you for that. That's very exciting. So we've got a good mix of experience levels on the call, and so we ought to be able to learn a pretty good bit about how we're implementing telemedicine into that process. So I find myself rambling a little bit. So Dr. Pucker, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. It's nice to see you again. Happy New Year to you. And I'll turn it over to you and let you tell the audience who is Andrew Pucker.
Thanks for having me. And of course, Dr. Rothschild, thanks for the amazing introduction. I actually started learning telemedicine from Dr. Rothschild. He is the one who pioneered it at UAB Eye Care. And I've tried to incorporate that along the way. And we'll talk more about that later. But how did I come to UAB? Well, I completed my ODMS and PhD degrees at The Ohio State University. And my PhD actually focused on myopia development. Specifically, we're looking at mechanisms by which the eye grows longer, which is a key issue with myopic humans and animals, which I was actually working with. But when I came to UAB, we had this special rotation set in the fourth years, and there was a hole in that schedule. So at UAB, we have a dry eye clinic, traumatic brain injury. There's a whole bunch of things that we offer, but there was a spot open, and I volunteered to help open the myopia control clinic. And that happened roughly 5 years ago. We're going strong now. And I've tried to learn everything I can along the way. We're all learning. This is a very quickly evolving field. If you are going to CE lectures, they're probably changing every few months that you go. So, you may even go see the same person and get a totally different lecture because things are moving that quick. So I'm glad you're all here with us today. I am going to focus more on kind of how we're implementing myopia control with telemedicine or telehealth. But if you have questions at all, please put them in the chat. We will take them as we go. And if you have a burning question about myopia management in general, you could throw that in there too. And if we have time, we'll try to get to it. So, maybe next slide. Cool. So how did we get started? Well, I told you a little bit about that, but I didn't give you the full story. So we started roughly 5 years ago, and it was a collaborative initiative. We're in a practice of, was it Dr. Rothschild, roughly 20,000 patients a year?
Yeah, you've got me on that, but yeah, that sounds about right.
It's a lot of people and a lot of doctors, a lot of coordinators. So what we did is we put together a focus group at the school, and we accomplished opening the clinic in a month, which is crazy at a school. Nothing happens that fast. But we had input from the pediatrics department, the contact lens department, the front desk staff, really everyone we could. And I recommend you do that with your clinics, get all your doctors together to kind of talk about how to best implement this sort of thing. But we initially opened out of the contact lens clinic. We wanted to be close to the contact lens materials. That's a big aspect of doing myopia management. But just because of space reasons, we ended up eventually moving to the pediatrics department, which we now think is maybe a little better for our clinic because most of our patients are pediatric patients, and we have a lot of internal referrals. So they're basically going to the same area of our large building. So maybe it's a little more comfortable for them. It's better outfitted for children. So we're happy that we're doing that. Overall, I think things are going pretty well. We'll talk about some key learning aspects along the way, but We now operate a full day a week. We have had telemedicine on and off since the pandemic started. Initially, we just did it. We scrambled. We used Zoom. We needed to meet with our patients to keep them on track. And then after we started working our way back in the clinic, I continued doing consults, initial consults and basic questions through the telehealth system. We then kind of let it go. We were trying to transition fully back into clinic, but we learned that our patients really liked this opportunity. So we made it a standalone rotation and we offered it twice a month last fall. And it was great. And really my reason for coming back to it was because we could potentially have both mom and dad and the whole family on the call at the same time, which hasn't always happened, but they have that option. And if you know how the telephone game works, you tell one person a story and it just gets diluted from there. It's been more effective with these patients having as much of the family present as possible to help get the message consistent. And we've, of course, developed some educational materials to assist with that. So we like doing that. And I'll talk more about the student aspect of that later, but it was a little inefficient. We were only seeing 2 patients in a half day, which was great from a teaching experience. We had time to meet with the students before and after, and we were really using our time, but we weren't making any money. So as a school overall, we decided to work in telemedicine to our normal schedule. And the other clinics have since done that. I wanted to only have the telehealth as my first morning visit. So like 8 a.m. So I'm there and I'm ready and I'm not with another patient. So we actually haven't done that yet because my schedule was booked out through February. So the last week of February, we're going to bring telehealth back to the myopia control clinic. So I've had a little break in there, but we've had some good experiences along the way. And I think I've learned some things that hopefully will be helpful for you.
So it's interesting, the process of, so one thing I learned during my time at UAB is that, as you're teaching students, the semesters are consistently changing and the demands in the clinic continue to come just like every clinic, right? And the availability of students, the availability of faculty members is a constantly moving piece. And it's interesting that you found a gap in the schedule when you already had your interest in myopia management and were able to sort of claim some space to implement it into there. But you, and just so everybody remembers, in optometry schools, the clinic is typically lots of patients like you described, but it's broken into a contact lens section, pediatrics, where vision therapy and things are. You've got a glasses area, dispensary, ocular disease, and a lot of low vision. A lot of specialties are sort of merged into one multiple use clinic. So the decision, talk to me, if you will, about that decision and the complications involved of switching from a contact lens, myopia control being a section of contact lens, to a section of the pediatric department.
The main difference for the patients is they have to walk really far now.
Oh, okay.
So our clinic is huge for, as clinics go for schools. So we're in the far back corner and I have to walk longer to get contact lens trials. That doesn't really affect the patients. I get my steps for the day, I'm healthier, but we're further away from the special testing equipment, which kids don't seem to care all that much about. But what we want to do, actually starting next month, is move them to our new premium clinic. So I didn't mention this yet, but we renovated a space right up by the front door where we're going to have dry eye, myopia control, and the faculty practice. And it's a premium area. So it's a little bit higher end because these are typically, not always, but often more affluent patients. We have very expensive things that we offer. And they, I think, expect a little bit more. So we're going to have bottles of water and that sort of thing. And we'll also be closer to the special testing, and some of the testing I hope we'll have space for in that new pod that we have, though I will still have to walk really far to get the contact lenses, which is okay with me.
Yeah, that's good for you. It's good for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, Scheduling is probably an issue in every practice, and Dr. Rothschild can talk more about that because he is a former private practice owner and a consultant. But with being a large clinic, I think it's very important to educate, and really applies to any clinic, is to educate your front desk staff and your coordinators, because they need to know what you're doing. What we're doing in the myopia management clinic is different than your typical contact lens or pediatrics department. And to the novice front desk staff member or a patient in particular, they may not know that difference. So I have created a introductory video for all of our staff that they can review. There is standard education materials that we hand out to our patients as well, so we give that to them. But having that knowledge, I think, helps them get to my schedule, because it's a specialty clinic. We're trying to do this with our other referral clinics too, but that is important. We recently hired a new coordinator. I think it's good to have a point person to refer basic questions to, so you don't have to do all of it. You're busy doing your thing at the school. I do research as well, and I'm in different buildings, so I'm not always there. But if you can have someone in your practice who just adopts becomes the champion of that specific thing you're doing, I think that would help a lot. So I've spent a lot of time educating our coordinator and our previous coordinator, and I've done kind of infomercials for all of our faculty and staff at different points. So it's good to have everyone on the same page. So with that, I think it helps to get them on the schedule easier. I pre-appoint now, which I'm probably still the only practice within UAB optometry that does pre-appointment. I'm sure in private practice, you're all doing that, but we have a lot of moving parts, right? Dr. Rothschild mentioned that we have students and that schedule is constantly changing, but I've picked a specific morning where I see most of my patients, so I can plan out a year ahead of time. So that helps people on the schedule coming back, because we want to see them every 6 months for various reasons. We want to make sure that they don't have a jump in myopia where they need a new pair of spectacles, which we're covering under our management fee. We want to get more data to see if they're actually progressing. You get your baseline measurement at 6 months. I don't necessarily change my treatment based upon that, but at a year, if I have 3 data points, I can make a line, whereas 2 data points, it's kind of, what's going on. But I think all those things are super helpful for scheduling. I rambled and added a little extra there, but I think those are good things to point out.
I think one of the interesting words you put in there is the evolution, because I think that's what it needs to do. Is it needs to gradually and steadily become part of your culture, right? And you've got added challenges being in a school because of the constant turnover of the students, faculty members. You've got several part-time faculty members that work in other roles that just come to work in the clinic. And so understanding the process, how to refer patients, and the fact that it's available just has to become normal, I guess, with a period of time. And that just takes time of consistently doing it. And it sounds like you're taking steps to get there.
I totally agree. As I briefly mentioned before, myopia management itself is quickly evolving. So we've had to evolve with it. And one of the things, with the pandemic, we adopted telehealth, and I think it's been a good thing. I don't know if I would have explored if it wasn't for COVID-19, but I think it's really helpful for our patients, at least initially, because I've actually added a PowerPoint presentation to kind of go through what we do with the treatments. And then I've actually, from learning about doing that in telehealth, I brought it to the main clinic to give the families a PowerPoint if they come in for the initial consultation in person. So there's a lot we can learn, I think, from ourselves.
That's great. So I am anxious to hear specifically how you're incorporating telehealth into the myopia management process, because if you think about myopia management, the overall process is you measure myopia, which is done in the clinic, axial length, any of the specific measurements, you implement a treatment, and then it's just basically managing that treatment and continuing to communicate with the patient. So it's a lot about building relationships with patients and family members, I assume.
Exactly. We primarily now use telehealth for an initial consultation. So it's dedicated time to go over my PowerPoint and then any questions they may have. And a lot of the families are very educated people. Like they have talked to friends who've done it. They've looked at our website, which I think is really important for my management to have a website that you're showing that you're doing it, because we're marketing to millennials or parents who are millennials who, at least I won't even go to a restaurant if it's not on the web. But yeah, I have considered doing some basic follow-ups via telehealth, but I want to get that data. I want to get eye length. I want to get refractive error. So I generally have everyone come back, and occasionally I do some emailing or phone calls, and I could work in a Zoom, but that takes more planning.
Okay, yeah, sure. So, so I think the next slide talks a little bit about your step-by-step process. Is that right?
Well, I don't think it's quite that, but I did have a question around the patient feedback and the patient education piece of it. So you mentioned a lot of your patients are well educated in myopia, but I think there's a great number of parents that are not, that maybe come across your clinic too. I know personally, I've gotten calls from friends who say, oh my gosh, my kid just got diagnosed with myopia. What does that mean? Who do I need to go see? My head is spinning, because they just don't have the knowledge that we do being in eye care. And I think I'd love to hear about how having that, consultation via telemedicine, how that helps with the education piece and taking the time to answer those type of questions in an environment that might be more comfortable for parents, being at home together with their partner, what have you. When you told me about that, I just thought that was so incredible, just thinking about my own schedule and how to carve out time with my husband at the same time in our busy work schedules, so if you could speak on that, that would be great.
I'm happy to. So I drew a lot of on my research background with writing consent forms, and on my time with Contact Lens Spectrum, I was the editor for Contact Lens Care and Compliance. So I learned a lot about patient education during those opportunities. And it's imperative to kind of treat everyone the same. So you have a radiologist, name your advanced specialty, physicist. Research suggests that they want it in basic terms, just like anyone else. So don't treat them differently, and then give everyone the full story. And what I typically say is, I'm going to maybe talk about some things you already are aware of. You may not be aware of them. Please ask questions along the way, but I keep it simple. I keep it relatable. I keep images, which I think are imperative for patient education. A picture is worth 1,000 words is the saying, right? So if you have a picture of an eye, you can show it and you can say, hey, this thing is getting longer and we're trying to prevent that. And that's not going to be corrected or slowed with your standard glasses or contact lenses. I think that's more meaningful than just kind of blathering on, which I sometimes do. But then after, I give them a consent form. There's kind of controversy if you need a consent form or not. I would give them all the same information either way, and you can decide if you want to have patients actually sign a consent form, because the stuff we're doing is, I think, standard of care these days. I think it was the World Health Organization or some fancy organization really recently said that, myopia is becoming the standard of care. I'm sure someone on the call can put in the chat what actually the organization was, because I'm blanking on the specific one. But, I think you're legally okay to do this as long as you're informing your patients about what you're doing. So with that, people take away 10, 20% of what you say verbally, and then they retain like 80, 90% of what you send them written and they read. So it's good to talk about, it with them, ask if they have questions, and then send them stuff home, such as our consent. And we also have a pamphlet that is much shorter. It's got bullet points and pictures, which gives a high level overview of what we do in our clinic.
Yeah, that's helpful. And one thing that came up in the questions a couple of times is the issue around the price around myopia management program, that sometimes they hear those price points and immediately turn off. How do you get over that hump and show them the value, during the consultation or at any point when you're speaking with parents, um, to understand the value of the program?
I guess that gets to our challenges bullet point, but
Yeah.
um,
It's a top one, it seems like, based on the questions coming up.
we can't talk about specific fees in this forum, but
Right.
I will say that our fees have vastly changed over time, and the way we charge them has changed. So there's two ways you could do it. You could do a global fee, and one is a la carte. And based upon what our attorneys told me, we have to do it a la carte now, which is fine. But a lot of practices do a global fee. The global or the total cost for some of these options is a lot of money. But what we've done as a school is we've decided to make atropine very economical. So it allows patients to get in and have a vetted treatment that works essentially as well as others for a much lesser cost. And this really mostly applies to schools, but companies like CooperVision have done a gift to patient program for the MySight, so the only FDA approved product that we can get. So if we have some underserved patients who would benefit, we could actually fit them in that product. And I'm sure you could even reach out to some labs if you're looking at OrthoK, maybe they'll donate some lenses, but you have to kind of look at your market, price yourself appropriately based upon how much time you're spending with these patients. And you will probably refine that after you've done a few of these, because you'll realize that some of these visits are pretty long. But I don't have a great answer. I'm just going to say it evolves and it's different by location.
Yeah. So what we have found is that anytime you want to talk about a high dollar service that you're talking to patients about, is say it with confidence and have good materials to describe it and be good at answering the questions. And as you practice saying it, it's better and better. But it's one of those things. It's far better to offer it as a service and offer it with confidence rather than know that your patients may be needing it and make a judgment to not give it to them because you feel like they can't afford it.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's where education is key. So the most expensive thing may be the best option for that patient. Maybe they are someone who has some myopia. They don't want to wear glasses in the swimming pool. They're on the swim team, and maybe they're a perfect patient for orthokeratology. So maybe that patient and their family thinks that, I don't have a ton of money, but our disposable income may be best served by going with that option over one of the other things we do. But education's key. And I have a lot of physicians who come with their children, and we actually put references in our consent so they can go home and convince themselves if it's worth it or not, because it's good to have critical people. And if they convince themselves with the materials you provide them, then maybe they'll go for it.
Are people coming in asking about myopia management yet?
Sometimes. It's not super common in Alabama. If I were talking to my friend at UC Berkeley, they'd be like, people are knocking down the door. We got over 1,000 patients regularly each year. I don't know our exact numbers, but we do maybe 30 to 40 visits a month from what I've gotten from our reports.
Okay.
So that's something, especially for a half day to a day week for our clinic. But we tend to get internal referrals, and we get referrals from other doctors. And I'm proud to say that even ophthalmology next door is starting to refer to us. So they're considering that we're the experts,
Yeah,
at least in
that's
some
good.
instances.
That's awesome. And did you initiate that charge in getting those referrals? Did you reach out to the ophthalmologists and the other referring, maybe pediatricians in the area, to let them know you have this available and educate them on why it's so important?
We did one push with the pediatric physicians in Birmingham. We went to Children's Hospital and we did a hour and a half lecture on what we do. And we got couple families that way. And we do marketing through email and Twitter and Facebook and whatever UAB thinks is appropriate. So there's that. We don't always go over to ophthalmology, but I've networked with several of those people. So maybe that has helped.
Sure it has. We're right up against it. It's 8:31, so we've reached our time, but we're going to extend if anybody wants to hang with us. I think this conversation is so interesting and we've got a little bit more to share and some questions to dig into at the end. So we apologize for going over, but it's just such an interesting conversation. So hopefully you all hang with us, but if not, we are recording this session and we'll send you the replay afterwards so you can catch the tail end of it if you have other commitments. So do you have time, Dr. Pucker, to keep rolling for a few more minutes?
Of course, and I do want to throw one thing out that we haven't really talked about, which is the students. They love this. And I think now that we're teaching it in the schools, I think it's just gonna take off. You know, they've had hands-on experience, they're gonna feel comfortable with it. And, you know, as someone who's graduated now several years ago, like I was a little hesitant, but now that I'm doing it, I'm glad I did it. And I think that more and more people are gonna start adopting it. But the students have really been the ones who've convinced me to keep doing this. They find it a valuable learning experience, and the patients, as I said, also benefit. But being at a school, I thrive on good student feedback.
And I think that's true, you know, on both counts, on myopia management and telehealth in optometry, because, you know, a generation ago, they weren't teaching really either in schools. And now this is the generation that's really, I think, going to determine how big of a part of our profession it really is, because they're the ones learning it in school. They're learning it as a normal part of optometry, and they'll implement it into their practice at whatever level it's going to be. So I think it's an exciting time for these guys. I'm glad to hear that they're embracing myopia management. And I learned from experience over there, they certainly embrace telehealth at the school.
What I predict is it's going to be like scleral lenses. So if anyone's familiar with the SCOPE study, they did a study of, you know, who's fitting scleral lenses, et cetera. And they found that the number of people who graduated starting around 2008 dramatically increased the likelihood of them fitting scleral lenses. And the reason for that is we started teaching it more heavily in the school. So they were armed with that information, you know, starting to come up in residencies more often. And we're doing the same thing with myopia management. So I think that it's going to catch on. And then I predict that within the next year, we'll have a spectacle option, which will be, I think, comfortable for the people who are not super fond of contact lenses. So I think that'll even make it grow quicker.
Yeah, that's exciting.
So exciting.
Well, Allison, do you mind telling us a little bit about what AOS has to offer as far as how you can implement and use myopia management in your practice, utilizing your tools?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, we have a platform that can help with myopia management in a number of different ways. We have objective analytics for the ocular surface, so the anterior segment. We can analyze for ocular surface health for bulbar redness and injection. So if a patient is in ortho-K or a soft contact lens, is their ocular surface calm and healthy? If it's not, if there's some kind of irritation going on, we have those analytical tools to assess for that and to manage, right? So to watch the management of that. Is it healing? Is it getting better? Are we getting back to a place of homeostasis? We also have, you can see in some of these images, the staining image here, an automatic punctate count. So maybe it's an ortho-K patient that's having some staining issues because of an improper fit. Our software will automatically count that punctate. So again, baseline images and then management images and comparing, are we getting better with that? And then with Ortho-K fitting or even soft contact lens fitting, we have tools within the software to assist with that. So we have a 3D mode in our fluorescein tool. We also have a contact lens fit assessment. And then beyond that, we have telemedicine tools. So, Dr. Pucker has mentioned what a benefit that has been to patients in consultations. Could also be a great benefit for follow-ups. Maybe a patient just needs some reassurance in that contact lens wearing, or maybe some troubleshooting with the INR type stuff. So our software comes equipped with a live video call option. We also have a patient app where they can send images and videos of their eye. So maybe it's a contact lens complication that they want to send over. Is this redness normal? Maybe it's a situation where they need some validation or some triaging before they come into the clinic, but all that's built into the software. So it's great for myopia management and beyond. So thanks for giving me the chance to kind of talk about that. And you can head to our website, which is aos-hub.com, to learn more, request a demo, or just get in contact with us to continue the conversation. So that's that. I do want to kind of lead into the questions. We've got a couple here in our Q&A chat. So one thing that you mentioned was your PowerPoint, Dr. Pucker, which is so beneficial. I'm a visual learner as well. I would eat that up as a parent of or patient of yours. But do you have any templates or sample PowerPoints that you pulled from, or any ideas of what to include that's especially impactful?
I had the advantage of spending 5 years of just reading about this stuff, so I kind of whipped up a PowerPoint. But if you would like to have mine, you could email me and I'm happy to share it with you. It's a very simple one that just goes over what myopia is, the consequences of what might happen from myopia, and then the treatment options we offer. So
awesome. Thanks for offering that. Can I put your email address, or would you mind putting that in the chat?
Yes, I'll do that now. It's apucker@uab.edu.
Okay, apucker@uab.edu. Perfect. Thank you. The other question that came up was around coverage. Does Medicaid cover telehealth? Do you know?
I don't think anybody on this call is going to be necessarily an expert enough to answer that. I'll just let Dr. Pucker off the hook. So Medicaid is run by every state has their own rules. And typically what we're talking about, our topic is myopia management, which typically is billed as a global fee. Dr. Pucker was just sort of describing that. And so typically insurance is not going to cover that anyway. So all the different insurance companies, including Medicaid, continue to adjust their regulations on whether or not telehealth is covered. If
we talk about insurance in general with myopia management, they don't cover it. Unless you have contact lens materials, you could potentially get a discount or your materials benefits put towards your plan, which is actually why we went with the a la carte method for charging. But there's that. And then Alabama Medicaid, and I don't know that if this is the case in any other state, but Alabama Medicaid will pay for the atropine drops. And that still stuns me, but they do. And I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to keep rolling with it until they tell me no. I guess if you're unsure if your state, if you're in the United States, has Medicaid atropine coverage, I just called a compounding pharmacy. That's how I figured it out.
And what percentage is normal?
The concentration of the drops?
Yes.
So it's complicated, but typically people are prescribing these days 0.025% or 0.05%. And if you look at the research, the 0.05% is the most efficacious, but you start to see some side effects. And if you talk to Jeff Walleen, he'll tell you that the side effects are not all that different between that and the 0.025 in the study. But in my market particularly, I feel like the 0.05%, based upon talking to the pharmacist, is too strong for side effects. And I think that gets to every pharmacy in the United States makes it different. So the 0.025% in my area may be different than in your area. So I
really?
would talk to the pharmacy and you can try it out in your practice. But again, I predict in the next 2 years, there'll be a FDA approved atropine drop that we could just go to like a CVS, Walgreens, your favorite pharmacy to get.
Oh, really?
There's a couple of trials that are pretty close. So I'm hopeful.
It's an exciting time. Lots to learn. Hey, so Allison, this may be a question for you. Jason is asking, is AOS more of a standalone or can it integrate into other telehealth platforms?
It's more of a standalone because we have the clinical, piece of it, which is the objective grading. But then we also have built in the telemedicine tools. So we don't have integration with other telemedicine because we've got our own live video chat and patient app where they can send images. So hopefully that makes sense.
And of course, there's lots to learn on the website.
Yeah. And if you're not getting your answers there, just click the info button, and someone will be in touch with answers for you. So
I've used it.
We got one more question coming in that I'd like to go ahead and see if we can't get answered. Then we'll cut it off, and maybe we've got Dr. Pucker's email address. I'm sure he's a great guy, I can tell you that, and so I'm sure that he would love to answer any of your questions. But Sarah's got a question that says, in addition to Ortho-K, atropine drops, soft contact lenses, are there any other myopia control solutions available, such as a myopia control lens? And I assume that what she means by that is a spectacle lens.
If you are in Canada or not the United States in particular, yes.
Okay.
So in Canada, they have the DIMS lens. In Europe, I think they have the DIMS and Sight Glass product, from what I remember. The United States, and I asked Joe Rapone, he's the chief medical officer for Sight Glass, this last week at GSLS, and he thinks that maybe this year Sight Glass will be approved in the United States, but it's up to the FDA. So that's kind of a fluid timeline, but I think that they will be the first ones in the US. And then probably we'll get the DIMS, or they call it, I think, MyoVision. But I think that that's coming. And the other thing you could do potentially is time outside before someone becomes nearsighted. So the research suggests that if you're myopic, you're probably not going to slow your progression if you go outside more. But if you have, your 8-year-old kid who's myopic and little brother or sister in the office, you can encourage them to get a little more time outside, and that might help them. I think the question said, is there a drop also? Oh, do you prescribe?
I think the question was basically other treatments other than the ones that she mentioned.
I was just checking out one that just popped up, but.
Yeah. Is it good to prescribe atropine QHS? Do you prescribe atropine QHS? I
always do it before bed. The reason I do that is, in my mind, at least, it makes me feel like they're less likely to have side effects. And then the other thing is your nighttime routine, from what I understand, if you're a parent, is a little bit easier than your morning routine when you're trying to get children to go to school. So parents, I think, find it easier to make that happen at night.
I'll concur because I have kids of my own.
Well, guys, thank you so much for your time. Dr. Pucker, it's so nice to see you again. And thank you for spending some time with us this evening, sharing your expertise. It's been great catching up. Allison, thank you once again for putting this whole event together and getting people from all over the world to join us this evening.
Massive thanks to both of you for doing this tonight. So much great information. So thank you both for being here, and thanks to all the attendees for joining us. Hopefully you all took away some great pearls from Dr. Pucker and Dr. Rothschild. So thank you.